Story 4, Nicolas Leblanc, a story from France. Nicolas Leblanc was born in 1742 to a fairly well-off family in Cher, France. When he was 9, both his parents had died. He was taken in by a guardian who was Dr. Bien, who was practiced in medicine, and that inspired young Nicolas to go to Paris and study at the École de Chirurgie, which is the School of Surgery. When he graduated from there, he found he couldn't make enough money to keep his small family from the medical fees he was able to charge. So he looked for other employment as well. He became the personal physician to the Duc d'Orléans, who was, perhaps surprisingly for an aristocrat, on the side of the revolution in France. He was called Philippe Egality, but that didn't stop him leading a very extravagant lifestyle. Anyway, looking elsewhere, at the time, there was a shortage of soda ash and potash, which are the alkali materials. And the French Académie des Sciences knew about this. Now, why these were so important was because soda and potash were needed for lots of things. For instance, for soap making, for tanning leather, for bleaching cloth, for glass making. All those aristocrats really liked their big tall mirrors, and glass making for the mirrors really would benefit from having more soda, from pottery glazes, and farmers wanted it to make their fields more productive if they were acidic. So soda ash and potash were really important. The story of soap has got some information about this as well. Now, soda ash, which is an alkali, is or was made from burnt plants. And those plants were often seaside plants like glasswort, which is also known as samphire. So harvest that and burn it, and you get soda ash. Or kelp, seaweed. And that image shows a painting of collecting seaweeds along a beach to make soda ash, to make soda. It was labour intensive and it was very expensive. And there wasn't all that much of it. There wasn't as much as the industry needed. Now, the other alkali, potash, was from burnt tree bark or hardwood, and deforestation was a problem then as it is now because forests were needed for shipbuilding. Nobody knew quite what the chemical composition of these materials, soda ash and potash, was, but they knew that they were really important. In 1775, at the behest of the King of France, the Académie des Sciences offered a prize for whoever could come up with a formula for making soda ash based on salt, sodium chloride, a readily available raw material. And this was something that Nicholas took on the challenge with. And he came up with a brilliant two-stage process. He knew, well, people knew about the first stage already. It made something called Globus salt. We now call it sodium sulfate. But he made an entirely new second stage to use fairly readily available raw materials. He set up a factory of his own using money he'd borrowed from his boss, the Duc d'Orléans, for this. But unfortunately for Nicholas, the French Revolution had taken place, and France, especially Louis XVI, was in turmoil. This is Nicolas Leblanc's recipe. Start with some salt, sodium chloride. Get some stuff called sulfuric acid, a dangerous acid, also known as vitriol. Combine those and heat them to 900 Celsius, so lots of coal or charcoal needed to get them that hot. And you get a gas given off. It's a choking acidic gas, hydrochloric acid, but you get sodium sulfate left as well. Okay, that was already known, but he said, let's take that sodium sulfate and do something else with it. Should point out at this stage that this is a chemical reaction. And in the chemical reaction, there's something like a dance. So if you class looks at the sodium sulfate, where has the sodium come from? Well, it's come from the sodium chloride. Where's the sulfur bit of the sulfate come from? Oh, it's come from sulfuric acid. So we get the idea of the chemical reaction is the atoms doing a dance and swapping their partners. So the second stage, combine the sodium sulfate with some coal, which was probably charcoal at the start, coal when it came to Britain, and with some limestone now. Limestone is calcium carbonate. Again, heat in a furnace, even hotter. They will burn, and you get sodium carbonate, which is the stuff he was after. That is soda ash. You get some carbon dioxide given off, but there's also a waste product, calcium sulfide. So altogether, we've got 3 waste products. We've got the hydrochloric acid, the carbon dioxide, the calcium sulfide. But brilliant, we've got that soda ash, the sodium carbonate. So the summary is, you need some raw materials: salt, sulfuric acid, charcoal or coal, and limestone. The product is soda ash, and the waste is hydrochloric, which used to be called muriatic acid, and calcium sulfide and carbon dioxide. Back to Nikola. He didn't get his prize money, which would have paid for the factory. The revolutionary government didn't respect his invention. This was the turmoil of the French Revolution. He wasn't able to patent his invention. Instead, the revolutionaries published the method, so other factories were set up. To make matters worse, they confiscated his factory. Poor Nicolas was destitute. In 1802, Napoleon, who'd become the French ruler, 2 years later he became emperor, he returned the factory to Nicolas Leblanc, but he didn't get the prize money. So poor Nicolas had nothing to live for, so he thought. He took his own life, which maybe you don't want to go into too many details of. There are some links to the story of Nicolas in the teacher's pack. Might be good to tell his story in French. I'm happy to help with that. But the Leblanc process became known to the world. Paris became a center for the study of chemistry. And one of the other stories tells about at least one of the people who went on to study there and bring the ideas back to Halton. So looking to the future, ideas for students. This is work a school somewhere else has done, which is to ask the class what they would really like to invent for a more positive future. There's vaccines to think about. This child has thought of something to clean up the ocean, and it's been turned into Ollie the Ocean Organizer by an artist. But just the children's ideas for the things that would make our future better could be a really good way to look forward from this story, because the Leblanc process really did make a whole load of jobs better and made a whole load of products possible. It had its downsides, it had its good sides.